Hi, I'm Kat.
I'm Arden 13.
Welcome to our show, World Tiger.
Building Dragon.
Today we are continuing with some of World Anvil's summer camp prompts.
Summer camp is a program set up by the World Anvil team to promote world building as well as the community in general.
There'll be a total of 33 prompts all throughout the month of July, so if you're looking to win some prizes for your submissions, don't miss out.
World Anvil is a free in-browser tool that has everything that a world builder, a GM, or even a writer may ever need.
They also have some really incredible subscription options, so make sure to check those out as well.
Totally worth it and affordable. If you're interested, please consider checking them out. But in any case, I say it's time we got to the prompt. What is the prompt?
Today we get to write about a profession that has always been illegal or has recently become illegal.
Interesting.
It's a different one.
It is a different one.
I hadn't thought about this before.
Sure.
So...
I'm really interested to take at the angle of what has recently become illegal.
Right,
That seems like the more interesting thought process. Otherwise, because I'm thinking of just like thieves or criminals or mob bosses.
Right, that kind of group of people,
But we'll see what happens.
Don't know.
For you guys at home that may not be sure what exactly Kat and I are doing, we have set ourselves some parameters in order to finish this summer camp project. Each of us has 30 minutes to answer the prompt.
Each of our submissions have to be at minimum 300 words.
After our 300 words and the 30 minutes are up, the two of us will come together and share what we came up with.
Some of our best ideas have come from collaborations.
That they have. Ready for this?
Yes.
Let's try this.
Time skip!
And we're back.
We're back.
How did you feel about this one?
Once I figured out what I was writing, I really started to like what I came up with. There were a lot of things to fill in, lots of information I wanted to get to. But this is a brand new idea for me, so I kind of had to develop as I went. So, I don't know, we'll see.
I've been really taking advantage of the summer camp project in the fact that there have been ideas, like neophyte nuggets of ideas that I've had for Ellecrid and Nora, and this has really given me an opportunity to embellish and just flesh them out and really go, hard in the paint with them. So I also really enjoyed this one. I think I had I came in with not knowing what I was going to do, and I kind of took a page out of your book, and I had like all of my notes for Ellecrid out and like on my Google Doc, and I'm scrolling through going, what do I want to talk? I can talk. That'd be fun. Yeah, let's do that. Sure.
Yeah, that's what I did.
So.
But did you want to start?
I can, sure.
Okay.
Be happy to. So what I did, the organization that I talked about, is called, or at least the profession that I talked about, are called the Hexblades of Kalin. Now, in Ellecrid, there is this organization of Hexblades. Hexblades, they are a cult. Now, for normal people, when they're thinking of D&D, the world's greatest role-playing game, Hexblade is an actual class, and in 5th edition, it is a subclass of the Warlock. Initially, when I had created Ellecrid, Hexblades was a specific cult. It's not like anyone can be a Hexblade. If you were to play in Ellecrid and you wanted to play as a Hexblade, you would be a Hexblade of Kalin. That would be your patron. No, it doesn't matter, anything like that. So I enjoyed the idea of fleshing them out and talking about them. I went a little bit into, in the vignette, kind of talking about kind of their interaction, a little bit of their history that I later expounded upon. Basically, they were a organization on an island off the southern shores of Omith, the largest continent on Ellecrid. That's where they have their home base. It's just a lone tower on a lonely island. But the way that they kind of operate is very much like a cult. They would kidnap children or people. They would just take them off the streets and ship them back to the island, and they would start training them in order to become a Hexblade. This cursed warrior who serves this dark deity-like figure, Kalin, whose essence is said to reside on the island. But now we are supposed to talk about an organization that has either always been illegal or has recently become illegal. So what I came up with, what I developed, is that in my world I had already said that the Hexblades were illegal.
Right.
But now I was able to kind of flesh that idea out in the fact that in the southern area, the southern reaches of Omith, it is the largest empire. The country that runs that area is called the Empire of Denison. They're a human-oriented empire. This is very much, for for simplicity's sake, thank for the Emperor, just for the Emperor, rah rah. But at one point when the Empire was expanding and came across this island, what have you, they found these Hexblades and tried to bring them into the Empire, but they refused, and so the Emperor worked out a deal to say, basically trying to strong-arm them into becoming, like, his own personal, like, cult of assassins, necessarily.
Yeah.
That did not go over well.
Wouldn't imagine so.
Though they had this kind of peaceful, ceasefire understanding, you don't mess with us, we don't mess with you sort of situation. The Hexblades eventually made an attempt on the Emperor's, like, great-great-grandson, the crowned prince at the time, which completely severed all relations with the Empire. So Hexblades were deemed illegal. They were criminals, and they were sentenced to death on sight.
Oh, wow.
No, dead or alive, they wanted them dead.
Right.
Kill every last Hexblade. So I'm talking about the history here, that's fine. Basically a fleet was launched to this lonely island to eradicate the Hexblades in perpetuity, send their order in memoriam, like, very brutal thing. And the thing is that some people would look at that and go, oh, it's a cult, and you sent an entire army to kill them, that's a little bit overkill. But nobody really talks about the numbers of the men who came back, and the Hexblades were definitely an issue that they had to deal with, and earned their title and their notoriety very well. So the way that I kind of talk about it, and I love again, this is one of my favorite things about the article types. There's just, big blocks of text, but it feels meaty. It feels like there's a lot of information there. And I like to say there is. Qualifications, I talked about there not being really any qualifications to being a Hexblade. You basically just had to have a pulse. And you could be a human, you could be a dragonborn, a half-dragon, a lizard folk, a dwarf, an elf. Anyone could become a Hexblade of Kalin. You just had to be indoctrinated at this island and in this tower. But the interesting thing that kind of, like, breaks this organization down, not necessarily as to why they are criminals. I think the reason as to why they are criminals is pretty self-explanatory. They made an attempt on the Emperor's great-great-grandson, the Crown Prince. The way that the organization is broken down into is that there are 3 branches of the organization. There is Kalin's eye, there is Kalin's sword, and then there's Kalin's hand. The Eye are kind of the scholars of the organization of this cult, and their whole premise is to go out and seek dark secrets and grow their knowledge and understanding and power in the arcane and in the curses and the hexes on behalf of Kalin. The sword, a lot of people would probably get the breakdown here. The sword are obviously the warriors. They are meant to kill in the name of Kalin, whereas the hand are more or less your information gatherers, your not necessarily brigands, but the way that I describe the hand here is where the sword goes out and cuts people down, and the eye goes out and seeks knowledge and secrets and arcane understanding. The hand goes out, they are sent out into towns as beggars, and they are meant to gather information, gather coins, gather whatever they can, and as they continue to be this no one on the street, nobody pays attention to them, no one pays attention to where they're moving or where they're going. So as they work their ways into the nooks and crannies of society, they start to gather more secrets, they start to gather more information. So the hand is not like a helping hand, it's a blackmail hand.
Right.
And that's kind of the power that the 3 of them, the 3 branches really break down into. Benefits was another thing that we got into here, and I recall at one point we had I do believe it was during the title, there was another section for benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I made the joke that it's like, they don't have dental, but, good health insurance, life insurance, so on and so forth. I didn't want to do that here, but basically, in the section about benefits, the Cult of Kalin, or the Hexblades, believe that in doing their service to Kalin, this dark deity, is empowering them and granting them deeper knowledge and longevity and dark powers and so on and so forth. That as they spread his influence, they will in turn make him stronger, and they will be able to pass down that generation, that knowledge to the next generation, who will weed out the weak and only breed a stronger, more powerful, more efficient and effective cult. In that way, when I was writing it, I got a little Sithy with it. It felt very Sith in a way, especially the whole concept of the rooting out weakness.
Right.
At any point when an apprentice sees that their master is weak or faltering, or like their brainwashing or indoctrination is starting to falter, they cut them out. They kill them, and they take their power.
So there's no, like, if you're seeing someone within your cult that's starting to have doubts or starting to, maybe falter away, there is no, like, I wonder what's that's about. It's just, nope, you're done.
Cut them out. They're a tumor, they're a sickness that must be eliminated.
Wow, so that's how indoctrinated they get through that.
That is how indoctrinated they get. And it's interesting, in an interesting duality. They look at weakness within their own organization as a tumor, but the Empire of Denison saw them as a tumor in and of themselves,
right,
and they
had
to cut.
Tumor.
Yeah, they had to cut them out. It's very, when you look at a fantasy novel or you look at a fantasy setting and you read the title, you read the phrase, evil cult.
Yeah.
There's very few ways that this can go. But that was, I don't know if I came up with really anything else.
Now, you mentioned that they were wiped out, or potentially wiped out by the Empire.
Yes.
Was that 100% successful?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Absolutely not.
I didn't think so, but...
I did mention, I recall this line specifically in here, that, excuse me, they eradicated everyone on the island. Anyone that they found in the island, they turned over. They didn't tear the tower down, but they found every nook and cranny and wiped out everyone. Anyone that they found on the tower was killed. And then they set up a watchtower on the shore of the mainland, overlooking the tower, so at any point they could watch and make sure that nobody was coming back to the tower, or anyone who came back to the tower were caught and murdered. So they had a little bit of insurance, but as we kind of alluded to especially the Hand of Kalin,
they're out and about.
You couldn't hunt them all down, and they just look like the common beggars. So either you're gonna kill all the beggars, or you're gonna utilize a number of resources in order to find out where these people are. So the cult is definitely diminished, because they can't indoctrinate anybody else because they're not on that island, and they need the island in order to do that. However, the members who are still around are kind of like creating pseudo-hexblades, pseudo-cultists, to the best of their ability. The most notable that I have here is actually an individual called Drax the Damned One. And he is described to be, it is understood or it is assumed that he was a member of the Sword, and he is a black half-dragon.
I know a bit about Drax, so that, hearing that name, it's clicking. I'm like, oh, these guys. Great. Anyway, please continue.
No, that's all. That's basically all I got.
Okay.
Yeah, I went into the legality of it, as the prompt asked. Completely illegal, kill on sight. They are not well beloved in the Empire or anywhere. Outside of the Empire, they are kind of understood to just to be dark magicians, dark mages, witch doctors, so on and so forth. But people don't like them anyways.
Yeah.
You got somebody coming in saying, "My dark deity is coming." People are not gonna take kindly to that. They're gonna cut that out.
Gonna stop that,
but that's what I came up with.
I like it. I like that a lot.
Did you have any further questions, or are you ready for yours?
No, I think I had a question, but then you mentioned that name, and my brain just went, "Nope, time to go, time to go." Okay. But if I have any more, we'll definitely go back to yours.
Cool. Then, thank you for your time.
Yeah. So, For
What do you
mine,
got?
I got to write about, I don't know what it's been lately. I've kind of been on this, like, first word and then stalker or walker thing. So, like, right now the name of this profession is called planestalker. But that'll probably change. So, in essence, it is a group of magicians that worked for Sondominel during the conquests of truth or the Great War that happened throughout Theatrum. In essence, this profession, their role was to take large armies, large groups of people, and teleport them into other countries, other lands. So they had to be able to...
Like Castlevania style? Just like...
take a full army and move it. Yes. That was their job. And so...
Whoa, okay.
They were highly specialized, had to be the best mages around. Very few of them existed.
Very niche, too.
Yes,
sorry, please continue.
extremely niche.
Whew.
So when they talked about career progression on World Anvil, it was like throughout all the schools, all the mage schools in Sondominel, and even some of the, even some members of the church would be tested for like different levels to kind of see where you're at, as well as maybe your speciality or things like that. One of the tests would be to look at a room, get a layout of that room, and then go into a separate room and try and teleport a piece of fruit or an animal into that room without seeing it. And if you could do that, you were taken to a separate school and you were taught how to do that. You would start off with smaller objects, move on to people, move on to smaller groups of people until you could mobilize an army overnight. Like an entire army just switch over to another country. So this is what caused a lot of issues during the Conquest of Truth, because you'd just be like, well, they're about 2 weeks out. We've got time to prepare ourselves. Oh, no, they're here. Like, that's it.
We got 2 weeks out. We got time to prepare. Knock, knock, knock.
Nope, they're here. So that caused a lot of issues.
Sondominel, open up!
Pretty much. But, like I said, their purpose was just transporting these large armies. And throughout that social status, they were kind of seen as, like, up there with they kind of overranked even the highest generals. Because their power was so great, just being able to be like, I don't want to do that today. I'm tired. They'd be like, well, we can't really do anything without them, so what do you want? What can we do to convince you to move this large army? And they can ask for anything they want. So, yes. So, in essence, I talked about other benefits. They can literally ask for whatever they want. It will be given to them. No questions asked, because they have such a pivotal role in this war, this conquest of truth, whatever they called it. However, when they first discovered this power and certain people able to use it, they saw it as a great tool to use against other countries, and it was seen as this great new invention, but they hadn't really worked out all of the kinks in it yet, and so throughout the war, they started to notice that yes, their armies would transport to these new areas, but some of the members of their army would be a little different. Their movements wouldn't be as smooth, and they would start to fumble, and then they just started dying. These members would just drop dead on the battlefield.
As in these guys? Or?
Yes. The members of the army that were being transported would just start to drop.
Okay, so like soldiers would
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. After they had been transported over periods of time, and they would do autopsies and figure out what had happened, and I won't go into too much because that's part of what condition that I want to flesh out in World Anvil, but there was this disease or this thing running through the armies called the crumbling, where basically the
cerebral cortex?
Not that one, it's the thing that connects your two hemispheres of your brain. I wrote it down somewhere.
The cerebellum?
Cerebellum? Yeah. It would be eaten away. It would be gone. And so they tried to figure out, why is this happening? What is going on? And it came back to these planestalkers were not necessarily using... Originally, this idea was thought to be based on a school of conjuration. You're transporting, plane shifting, whatever you call it. They were basically murdering people and bringing them back to life in a different area. So it was now it was more necromancy versus conjuration. And so it became an issue where, like, they were still super powerful and it was fine, but when you do that over and over and over again, it started to...
It eats away at their brain.
Yeah. Oh. So they had to stop doing that. One, it's way too overpowered to be able to move large amounts of people just wherever you've seen before, but also the consequences of doing so over and over and over again. There's no real way to fix it at that time. So it was just like, nope, we have to stop. And this is one of the reasons why they had to kind of stop the War of Theatrum, and Sundom kind of took a step back and was like, okay, maybe we should reevaluate our decisions here.
Maybe we should rethink our lives.
Rethink our lives just a bit, you know, because their whole thing was pursuing knowledge and wanting to find out more, and they had found this great power, and it was now kind of turned on them. That they were kind of like, maybe that's a sign we should take a step back here. But yeah, so just the idea of this great, you know, these people who were so high in power, so incredible, seen as like kind of saviors to their nation, being able to do such grand feats. And then once more information came out, completely destroyed their reputation. Completely different ideas now. Now it's like, you're not moving people, you are massacring your own people and bringing them back to life in another area of the world.
So I assume that this organization, at least these people, did they know?
I would say that most of them did not know. I would love to have maybe a character or a person in the higher up ranks who discovered it and kind of kept it quiet, or knew what they were doing and kind of did it anyway. That kind of evil character, but for the most part, no, they didn't know. They were told that this was a great power and a great feat that they were doing for their nation. And to find out that horrifying realization, but yeah, I kind of started with this idea because I had the crumbling. I knew that condition existed in my world, but I couldn't figure out, like, how or why that worked. And so now I finally got to develop these characters. I'm not sold on the idea of plane stalker or plane shifter, because that's what they thought they were doing beforehand. That could be an old name where it was like, you know, they really thought that they were just shifting the planes, just moving on, but they were actually doing mass murder to move people.
I agree with you that I'm not entirely sold on the idea of plane stalker or plane shifter. Plane shifter is makes a little bit more sense for, like, what they believed they were doing, so that was what they were referred to as. But yeah, definitely coming up with a variation of the name for sure. But that's really cool.
Just something.
That's so.
It's scary, is what it is.
No, so what you thought? So here's what you thought you were doing. You thought you were taking this entire army and moving it to the front doors of somebody else.
High praise for it.
Oh,
getting,
yeah.
like, the highest regards, like the emperor or the all-seer or everybody who's anybody in Sundom would have shaken your hand for your work in the war. And then overnight you find out you are the reason that massive amounts of the armies of Sundom are just falling.
Or just dropping dead because of the crumbling. Because their brains are literally just, not exploding, but just like...
falling apart.
Falling apart.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you happen to give them, like, another title or anything like that? Like another name?
No, that's something that I'm gonna need help with. Because those were the only two that I could come up with. There has to be something like a modern term that people would give them. Like, they were called plane shifters, but now they're called...
Portal dogs?
Portal dogs.
So what this is sounding like to me is that they were a part of this great military, and I'm sorry that I'm making this connection and this parallel. I do that a lot. They were like, highly praised during this war. They had a specific task that they were meant to accomplish, and they got a lot of high praise and prestige for it. But now they're seen as like this organization that has committed these atrocities.
Yes.
And it really, to me, reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist. You haven't gotten there, have you?
No, I just made that connection in my brain.
But they're called like the dogs of the military.
Yep.
Yeah, so like that's where I came up with portal dogs or shifter dogs or something like that. Just nobody, you know, when you're calling somebody a dog, you're not trying to be friendly about it.
Right.
Unless it's like, hey, dog, what's up? But you know, like here,
it's a bad,
Oh man.
But yeah, either way, I'm gonna have to come up with a better term for them, but I still love the basic idea of taking this highly praised, militarized transportation group, and then just, you are the worst of society, you have no titles, you have been given nothing,
everything has been stripped.
Anything you had to your name is now stripped from it. You are nothing. You are less than nothing. No one wants to be around you. But yeah, that's what I came up with.
That's so dope. That's so cool. That's horrifying.
Yeah.
That's like a level of horror that I can honestly get behind in my fantasy, because it's like, oh, this is really cool. You know, you think of the really cool, really powerful like beings, like, but this is what they were doing. And you're like, oh. Yikes. Yikes! Wow, I'm sorry, I'm speechless, I have nothing else.
I've got nothing else.
Alright, well, that's all I got.
That's all I got.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know in the comments below something that you enjoyed about today's video, or if you have an idea that you're willing to share.
If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to hit all those buttons that everyone else bugs you about. We'd love for you to join our lunch table.
And go check out World Anvil if you're interested.
You guys have been great. I'm Kat.
I'm Arden13. I'm still waiting on that ramen.
We'll see you next time.
Bye!